Evening and welcome to Skits and Quibbles. It's our show where we look at artists and people who are making a real change in the performance world, and we find out what makes them tick. We have a fabulous guest. She is an author. She is the winner of the Firebird Book Awards in Ohio for Speak Up and Talk Radio. Her name is CO Moed and her piece is called It Was Her New York. She is zooming in all the way from New York to chat to us today. But before we get there, let's warm you up. So last week, I taught you one of the burlesque walks. We crossed the stage facing the audience. I'm going to teach you another one this week. And this is all about getting your hips into it. And this is simply walking forward. It's known as a cat walk or a panther walk. And that's because you walk with the opposite hand and leg moving. So as you walk one foot. So if it's the right foot, it's your left arm. And you tap your hip out to the side. And then next foot and tap your hip out to the side. And you carry on. So it is like a cat as you're walking this way. But you add the little burlesque tap as you go. See how you get on with that. Be careful though, because I know there's a little bit of hip action. But are you now warmed up? Let's meet our special guest all the way from New York. Take it away, CO.
Florence, the concert pianist who accidentally gave birth to me, is refusing to do much but lie in bed. I say, fine, you don't want to get out of bed, then go lay down and die. She yells, lie down, not lay down, lie down. I say, you can't get out of bed, but you can still correct my grammar. She yells, yes, it matters. I yell, then get out of bed. She doesn't. The Sunday afternoon, All the Jazz You Can Eat radio show begins. We settle in to listen. Sinatra comes on. He's wailing blues in the night. Florence joins in. Ooh, woman, two faces, crying in the... Now, knowing something of her dating history, I ask her if that's true. She says, I didn't make that up. That's what's written. I start laughing. She asks why. Well, you're singing with heart. She shrugs. I'm just trying to get the words. And then she, who broke many hearts of many old girls and garnered many angry love letters and hurtful looks across crowded dances put on by the local gay and lesbian senior citizen center, she looks up and asks, is it true a woman is two-faced? Whatever you call them, tits, titties, tatas, chest, breast, or as Florence called them, bosoms, the competition to grow them and then buy your first training bra was fierce on Grand Street. Of course, all my friends got their bras first, regardless of how big they were, and none of them were big. But their parents were not only willing to train their daughters to get used to bondage, they were willing to splurge on something completely unnecessary. Finally, desperate to fit in and keep up, I ripped every single one of my undershirts down the middle and insisted to Florence that my baby bosom had just busted out of heavy woven cotton. I actually said that. My bosom just busted out. You can't argue with desperate lying. Florence very reluctantly gave me $10, which was probably half of our food budget knowing her, and sent me off to Grandin Orchard, where all the underwear stores were run, almost exclusively by Hasid and Orthodox Judas family. No matter what store you walked into, the entire family was working there. Mothers, fathers, sister, brothers, cousins, grandparents, in-laws, everyone. If one of the men waited on you, he would do this really fast. You almost can't see it, side glance across your chest, and then pinpoint the exact cup size. However, if it was a woman helping you, sizing was much more participatory. Weiss Loungewear, one of the bigger stores, looked empty, so no risk running into anyone and embarrassing myself. Avoiding the men, I made a beeline straight to one of the grandmothers. I don't think I even finished saying training when, without warning, she planted both hands on everything I'd been able to grow in 12 years. And then just as quickly, she turned around and pulled out from the hundreds of identical thin white boxes that lined the entire wall one specific white box. A training brassiere appeared. She didn't even have me try it on, just packed it up, took Florence's $10 and handed me back a bunch of change. Headed home, I was a bit bewildered by touch I had only experienced before from camp counselors and friends' uncles. But at least this time, I was carrying proof I was now a woman. A couple of years ago, in need of a bra that not only fit but also fulfilled certain vanity criteria, I returned to one of the last remaining family-run underwear stores on Grand and Orchard. Stepping into familiar walls stacked with hundreds of identical white thin boxes, I caught the young Hasid man at the counter give me that "you almost don't see it" side glance across my chest as I headed straight for the grandmother. I don't think I even finished saying an underwire.
CO, that was just beautiful to listen to, and congratulations on winning the Firebird Book Award, Judge's Choice as well.
Thank you. I know, it was the best day ever.
Fantastic. For it was her New York. I mean, what does winning mean to you as an author, first of all?
Okay, I just have to tell you, to have someone who doesn't know me or Florence or our family like the book is everything. It was just an affirmation that I wasn't crazy to do this. So it really was like Christmas and Thanksgiving and all our holidays all at once. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sponsoring the award. That means a lot too.
Oh, no, we like to encourage performers, artists of all backgrounds and everywhere, and we want to support them in getting their work visibility, getting that validation, that sense of acceptance of themselves and the work that they do as well. So it's such a pleasure.
Okay, well, I was thrilled. I really was.
Well, I also read your book. I wasn't judging it. I read your book before this interview, and it was so moving and so beautiful, and just some of the moments, which I will mention later on, really just stuck with me. But what inspired you to write this beautiful, beautiful memoir?
Part of it was just to keep my writing skills sort of visible, but also it was to really keep my mother and my city from becoming invisible. They were disappearing before my eyes, and I thought I must affirm that they are here and that this is what they also are as change happens.
That's very powerful, because you're talking about a woman who was living with dementia, and even without dementia, I find as people get older, they become less visible, sadly. It seems to be a way that society tends to speak to us. So what do you feel is still misunderstood when it comes to both actually living with dementia and caring for someone with dementia? And I'm going to throw in there, and aging as well.
And well, I think the most important thing with dementia is that it's not personal. Yeah. And for the carer to really accept that the lack of memory or the misunderstandings or the anger or the fear, it's not personal. Their brain is going someplace else. It's going into another world. And so when it's not personal, then there is that process of having to lose the relationship you had. You are no longer in a relationship with the person you knew. You're in a relationship with someone who is new to you. The relationship is different. So it's not personal. And I think with aging, that as I get older, it takes me longer to formulate sentences sometimes, or I'm losing a word. And what I need for myself and what I require from others is patience. I'm past a certain age. My husband's past a certain age. So there's a call to patience, which in the age of TikTok doesn't really exist neurologically. We're really on 1 second cuts and 1 second ideas and 1 second images. But as you age, I think I need a few more seconds.
I think when we're young, we need a few more seconds as well, actually.
I do.
I struggle with the TikTok generation thing, because actually there's a lot of misinformation on there which can't be checked in 30 seconds or in such a short amount of time. So I think it would be helpful if we all slowed down a little bit. But
I do too. But that's what I noticed about it's like, oh, slow down, enjoy.
Yes.
What is this moment?
Yes, very much so. And you're very right about how, because the world is moving so quickly, when somebody can't keep up, patience is not the first thing. It is almost, oh well, you just can't do it anymore. You're almost dismissed, and that's
Yeah.
heartbreaking for a lot of people who have a lot of skills that simply
And a
aren't,
lot of wisdom.
yes, aren't given the
Yeah, a lot of
chance.
wisdom. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So
So tell me about your next reading, which is not Coney, Coney Island.
Florence was a stickler for language, and I was a mess. I just, and I still am. I can make up a word out of 6 words and still think it means the same word. But Florence was a stickler for language. And, in this interaction, it was her demanding of me once again to say things correctly. But in that moment, I had to look at her whole history of what Coney Island is to her. And that was the beginning of me introducing this love that she had hidden for most of her life, and the love that this ex-lover had hidden for most of her life. So it was an introduction of the infamous and most cherished ex-lover in the book. Okay, Florence is not only refusing to get out of bed, she's refusing visitors everything but her back. Kay, the recreational therapist, managed to get Florence to turn to her by playing a sonatina really badly on her electric keyboard. Annoyed by sloppy playing, Florence rolled over, corrected Kay's mistakes, and then rolled back into her own little corner. Kay didn't give up. She began to mispronounce composers' names badly. Florence rolled back over, began a lesson of how Debussy is supposed to be pronounced. A couple of days later, having finished my swimming lesson, I looked down at the glass balcony at the gym's pool filled with bodies going back and forth and recalled a recent conversation with the ex-lover, the woman Florence had loved all her life, the woman who had loved Florence, her Deutsche, all her life. Now, they first found each other when they were so young they still had hope, but were old enough to recognize passion and desire for one another. Decades later, they reunited, but only briefly. Both too old to change in their ways or to heal from a lifetime hiding from love. No one knew Florence like the ex-lover. Oh, your mother, my Deutsche, was a great swimmer. Your mother, my Deutsche, could swim anywhere. Your mother, my Deutsche, we went to Coney. And then your mother, my Deutsche, she went out. She went way out. And then your mother, my Deutsche. Now, I knew Florence went back to Coney as far as Florence and the ex-lover. Years ago, before we knew her memory had begun to fray, I got Florence to talk into a microphone about the place she loved more than her piano, Coney Island. Staring at the swimmers below, I wondered if I could coax Florence to roll back into life. I called her. Hello, Florence. I just finished another swimming lesson. I used to go swimming. I swim, Florence said. I know, in the ocean. I had to shout this because she had, again, forgotten how to hold a phone to her ear. Yes, right. And then you sit on the boardwalk and watch the people. They see you alone and they try to strike up a conversation. Get out of bed and I'll take you to Coney. Not Coney. It's Coney Island. Coney Island. Fine. Get out of bed and I'll take you to Coney Island. Okay, maybe tomorrow. Don't eat too much and lie down. And with that, she clicked off and rolled back into her own deep waters.
When I was reading the book, I found it so moving, especially your own experiences. You share some of those within your writing. You share the pain, the hurt, the struggle, and did it help you therapeutically writing the book?
I guess I want to say therapeutically, what it helped me feel was the greater picture of what it meant to care for a parent and love a city, and how the process helped me sort of affirm what was going on instead of everything being inside and saying that didn't happen or didn't matter, but to say, oh, this matters. And I'm honoring these stories and I'm honoring this woman's life. So it wasn't so much therapeutically, it was just more holistically, I think, that I just felt like I was standing witness to something that could so easily get lost. I mean, we talk about history as being told by the victors of the war. Well, she wasn't necessarily a victor of the wars. She was an artist who didn't receive the fame that she could have had or the accolades because she was a woman of a certain time. But she was a victor in her own life. Women get murdered every 11 minutes by a member of the family around the world. This has been going on for decades. And yet here's a woman who survived billions of 11 minutes to play her art, to practice her piano, to express her artistic vision. And I was gonna honor that. I was not going to let her become another woman that disappears into the mist of no one writing their story.
That's so so moving. That really, when you said about how it matters, these things matter, and
Yeah.
we're not going to let somebody just go, oh well, and dismiss it, and just because somebody wasn't, I don't know, a household name or something like
Or
that,
household name,
suddenly,
or very famous.
yeah,
Yeah.
suddenly
Yeah.
they
She
don't
become
matter.
we, the women become the title, mom,
Yeah.
grandma, nana. Those are wonderful. Those are wonderful expressions of love. But who also is in that person? What
Yes.
else have they done?
Yes, absolutely. And it does matter because you're absolutely right. You are the hero of your own life, and everyone's story matters. That's absolutely right. Now tell me more about your relationship with Florence. You call her Florence. She's was your mother.
Yes. Florence on Mother's Day, I think when I was 11 or 12, and I'm really not sure when, she just said, "My name is Florence, call me Florence." And my sister and I went, "Okay." Um, she was saying, "I'm a person."
Mm,
And it was a very, very radical thing to do. And yes, there was a loss of the sort of Disneyland maternal fairy tale that we all need and want and hope for. I found other mothers and other fathers and other parents and other mentors in my life. What I got in exchange was a woman who absolutely understood the process of art, of what it meant to sit down and be a writer or a painter or a musician, and how fierce she was in supporting that. So she wanted me to call her Florence. I was honoring who she was, not what she was. And I occasionally called her mom and mommy, and but mostly she was Florence. She was a person. How many people can look at their parents and say, "Oh, that's a person"?
yeah, and you're honoring her again with your writing and also giving her voice back, and that's just beautiful. And why do you think it's so important to savor these snapshots in time? You know, just those moments that you talked about a training bra, and we all connect with that moment. And
Well, a lot of us do.
yeah, yes, a lot of us do. A
Yeah,
lot of us
but
do.
I think even boys have training jock straps. I love, I mean, I was thinking about the relationship between image and story, and they really are one and the same to me. And I think I grew up on looking at picture books. Grew up on looking at cartoons. The Family of Man photograph book was like this place that I constantly returned to look at. They told me the story that I couldn't hear or read. So a lot of the snapshots were telling the story that I couldn't write down fast enough, or they called for the language, or the language needed to be supported by a picture. A picture is 1,000 words. And so all the
Absolutely.
pictures were all the extra words that I didn't know how to say or write. They were the world that I lived in.
Yes, and that comes across as well, that love of New York as you experienced it with Florence, which is
Yeah.
is so so vivid when you read your work. And there is so much emotion in your experience. And one moment that struck me personally was when you talk about your observations of how you were looking at other patients and they were clearly washed and dressed, which meant somebody loved them enough to wash them and dress them.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about personal care in particular, it is a very difficult thing to do. And it can be even harder when that person has dementia because
Yes.
of the struggle that you might have with in the interactions. So for me that was really astute and very, very moving. And what do you want other people to feel when they read your book?
I want them to feel visible, that I'm telling, that they feel it's their story. And the thing that has been shocking to me and wonderful is that people are responding as, "Oh, that's my story too." Every writer wants their work to be, can, to be universal or to have people connect to it. I wanted people who are taking care of elderly parents to know that it was their story too. And in the book, there are several people who talk about taking care of elderly parents or, taking care of people who are their patients. It's all of our story of what it means to care for someone who is walking slowly or fast to their death. And how are we going to walk them to it? And the whole thing of taking care of their hygiene was huge. With dementia patients, they're not comfortable with water. They don't want to get into the tubs, or there's a whole process. And it's actually a story in the book of learning to take care of someone in their bed and keeping them clean because they're so frightened of water. I could always tell when there was someone in someone else's life. If I met an elderly person, I always knew that there was someone loving them if they were clean, if their clothes were clean.
Yeah. It's just that image alone is incredibly emotive. Now, the next reading is called Food, Lies and Eating Well. Tell me about this next reading, please.
Irene and I met when we were adults, but we actually knew who the other person was because we could recognize a Lower East Side girl. And I guess in London, it might be East Enders or I don't know. I don't know your neighborhoods, but there's certain neighborhoods that say, oh, yeah, I know who you are. And Irene and I knew who we were. And so there's actually several stories of Irene in the book. She was just a Lower East Side girl. She knew Florence because Florence was a music teacher in the neighborhood. And we shared the struggle of taking care of parents. She was actually taking care of her mother and her mother-in-law, and I think maybe an aunt. And so we were always kind of in touch. And there was this exchange about how do you get an old person to eat when they won't spend money on food? Yeah. And that's not an unusual issue, especially when we're dealing with limited budgets. Irene, my fellow Lower East Side girl, and I touch base. Her mother had a fall, but is doing okay. Irene, on the other hand, is swamped with caretaking. The strategy that I used on Florence, reassure and agree, is definitely helping her get through the day, except for the issue of food. I always offer to buy my mom food she would enjoy, Irene writes in her email. However, she refuses and insists on getting free food from the neighborhood senior food program, but she only marginally enjoys those meals. I mean, she would prefer to eat fish and beef prepared Cantonese style, but there's no way that would be free. At her age, she should be enjoying what she eats, but she won't take anything that isn't free. I mean, it's just got to be the aftermath of the Chinese-Japanese War when she was a child. Oh, the fear. There isn't enough money for food because of war, because of the Great Depression, because of poverty, there was only one thing to do when faced with an old person refusing to spend money on good food. Lie, I write Irene, lie. I told Florence I was getting all this free food from the government because she was losing too much weight. So she started eating again. Lie. And then tell your mom that the Chinatown Alliance opened up a free food program for seniors. Oh, Claire, Irene writes back, you don't understand the power of Chinese networking. My mom just has to mention it to one person, how delicious the food was, and direct that one person to Chinatown Alliance. And sooner than you can say, Chinatown Alliance would have a line snaking around the corner. And then Chinatown Alliance would put out a wanted poster for the morally depraved Jewish chick who told a lie. Well, I've always wanted to be wanted.
Now, that piece, it struck me because it's that whole thing about you sometimes have to lie. Because if you're the caregiver and they don't know, you just... And it's a gentle lie. It's not going to hurt anything in the long run. But I think...
Oh, no, I lied all the time. I mean, my parents taught my sister and I to never lie. And I'm actually scrupulously honest. But when she was frightened of gaining weight,
yes,
I lied and told her she had lost weight. I needed her to eat. The doctor said she needs to eat. It's like, you got to eat. So it's like we said, oh, you're losing too much weight. She started eating.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's that juxtaposition, isn't it? You're brought up by the very person that you're lying to.
I know. It's the irony is just shocking.
It really is. is. I mean, now, did you always want to write? Obviously, Florence was so into her art and her artistic nature. Was that always something in you?
No. So when I was growing up, what I wanted to be was a musical theater star or Carol Burnett. I loved character actors. I wanted to be on stage. And that wasn't possible because of money and because of, family culture, but because we come from a long line of musicians. But Florence gave me a notebook when I was about 12 or 13 and said, here, keep a diary. I did when I was your age. And that became the only place that I could express myself. So in a lot of ways, the writing is an expression of being bonsai'd, just being sort of kept into a smaller space. And yet it's where I got to really explore all the feelings. And who knows, I could have been a terrible actor or a terrible dancer. But clearly when I step into writing, I am in a place of complete selfness and peace. I feel as often like I'm a conduit for a power greater than myself to tell a truth that's bigger than my life.
Oh my goodness. I can imagine so many writers will really resonate with them. I mean, what do you wish someone had told you when you were starting out as a writer? Because I know there will be writers out there really inspired by you, but then maybe also
wow, I hope so.
feeling, but she's an award winner. She's done all those things. But that's what you tell yourself. Could you have any words of wisdom for somebody who is starting out and really wanting to be you?
Oh, no, please don't be me. It's very expensive therapy. So I would say one is, there are different things. One is craft. And when I really struggled with my writing, I did use the artist's way to reclaim my fingers, to reclaim my pencil. So I always recommend Judith Cameron's The Artist's Way. I think it's an extraordinary workbook. I'm not reading about writing, I'm reading and writing. So I picked up craft. I picked up skill and discipline and exercise because writing is only habit. And I really just want to, it's habit. Sit down, write, and don't think about it, just keep writing. There's a lot of automatic writing. But I think the other thing is I had male teachers, unfortunately, not support the story that I needed to tell. And so I urge writers to really seek the place where they're going to be advocated for. And I found places. I found amazing women writers who supported me. Amy Ferris, who's an extraordinary writer. She just finished A Mighty Gorgeous. And also Phil Viambri, who the Ancient Marrier, Rhymes of the Ancient Marrier. He ran a reading series in the East Village, and he has several books out about his own life and about the East Village, about dive bars. They're extraordinary. So both those people were fierce advocates. And so a writer, especially a new writer, has to learn to listen for who's really championing them. Because all you have is habit. I sit down, I write every day. And then you have people who say, keep going. And those two things really matter. Yes. So for new writers, find the people who think you're amazing, but are going to tell you to rewrite something and build up, like going to the gym, like brushing your teeth, like getting that cup of tea. Any habit you have, that's your writing habit.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think that is so important. You're absolutely right. It is a habit. It is a habit that you get into even on the days that you really don't want to, which actually kind of leads me to my next question about writer's block.
Especially on the days you don't want to.
Yes. Do you ever
have... Especially the days you don't want to. Write one word. I mean, we were actually talking about writer's block this morning. My husband's also a writer. Ted Trevor writes a totally different genre than I do. He writes thrillers and mysteries and, like very funny, escape things. I mean, he's a very funny genre, like writer. I love his books. He does not write like me. And we were talking about, well, what is writer's block? And writer's block is when you are listening to the shame in your voice that says you're not good enough to tell a story. And when that happens, that despair, that depression, that futility, that block that I can't move, I do everything I can to write down 3 lines And sometimes it's just gratitude. I'm grateful I have a pencil. I'm grateful I have paper. I'm grateful I have a home and a roof over my head. I just 3 lines. Or I say to myself, just write 5 minutes. Just do it for 5 minutes. Don't do less. Don't do more. Just 5 minutes. And sort of making it less important, making it not like, oh, I have to be Philip Roth or, Salinger or any of the great writers. It's like, no, keep it simple. There's an expression in my neighborhood called KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
So keep it simple, write a little, and then walk away. But do it.
Yes.
Do it every day. In writing this book, I struggled through so much despair. I would sit on my little, chair and just think, why am I doing this? It was devastating. And yet I would make myself do another 5 minutes of work. So just 5 minutes, 3 lines. And also, one thing that I urge writers is watch the self-medication. I wrote one thing once in the last 45 years when I was drinking. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I nibble on some fruit when I'm working. When I'm working, it is a sacred space, and I really honor myself. I also go to the gym a lot. Not in England. I've not been to the gym in England. My God, your food is good.
Oh my goodness!
In New York,
No,
New York, I'm not eating scones and cheese, and I really my writing is the expression of me really treating my life with respect. So writer's block for me is where I have to challenge my disrespect, my shame, me believing the critics in my voice that tell me I'm worthless.
Incredibly important words there, especially from somebody who's clearly reflected on these experiences and really thought them through. So all the new writers out there, really important.
It's rumored to be made of horsehair, this bed Florence has slept in since 1977. Bought with the only girlfriend she ever lived with, and eventually dumped for the ex-lover in their wild reunion fling when they were both in their 60s. I think there was even a story of this girlfriend and Florence giggling like mad when they brought this queen-size mattress into the building because all the neighbors were watching and knew something different was happening behind closed doors. Or maybe that was the Christmas tree story, another act of vandalism that only 2 middle-aged lesbians could do in a Jewish enclave. I have never laid down in this bed. I have stripped it, cleaned it, made it. I have sprayed it with Febreze. I've sat on it, held Florence's hand, and comforted her on this bed. I have dressed her, undressed her, clipped her nails on this bed. And every time, thinking that she was back in the tenement on Hester Street where sleepovers were common between friends, Florence would invite me to lie down, go to sleep on this bed. The bed she bought to begin a new life, a new hope, a new love. The bed where she promised herself better futures and denied worse pasts. The bed no man ever slept in. The bed where she cradled herself through sleep, the radio playing all-night NPR news shows. The bed she loved in, climaxed in, lost love in, splintered peace with frightening dreams in, refused to cry in, cried in. Her bed, filled with poems fiercely recited as reality shattered and disappointment flooded in. Tomorrow, the Medicaid electric hospital bed will arrive. Its hydraulic lift will make bed-bathing Florence less backbreaking for Gabriella, the Medicaid home attendant. It will have bars to keep Florence from falling out in the middle of the night, and buttons that push Florence up to sitting and down to sleeping. And when it is no longer needed, it will be returned to Medicaid. Tomorrow, Gabriella and I will somehow coax Florence from her old bed. I will lie, not on her bed, but to her face. I will say, we're putting you in a special bed just for a little while until you get better and can sit up without getting dizzy. And when you do get better, and when you are walking again, you will go lay down in your own bed, and then we'll go to Coney. And she will correct me and say, Coney Island. And I will lie down, not lay down. And I will nod and know that my lie is forever. There are times where I've been included in readings, included in anthologies. Getting this book acknowledged has been a huge high. And then there are the lows. I can't write. I got rejected. They hate my work. The audience didn't respond. You know what? It just is. And whether the career is high or low, it doesn't matter. I mean, it does. Of course, it matters that people love my work. I want everyone to love my work.
And you will.
However, if you don't, I still have to work. I still have to write. I still have to honor my writing. I still have to love my husband. I still have to go get groceries. To really keep it simple, stupid, that KISS principle. Actually, my friend says, please don't say stupid. Keep it simple, sweetheart. So keep it simple, sweetheart. The highs and lows are just high and just low.
Amazing. Where can we learn more about you?
I do have a website, COMOED.net. And it has a lot of different work on it. Right now, it's very focused on the book because that is the thing front and center. But I also have photograph processes that I'm working on. I'm doing several readings with new work, and I'm about to start a project with other writers and performers where we're looking at father-daughter relationship. So I'll be doing something similar to what I did with Her New York with his photo and language. And then you can always write me. And I want to call out to the new writers, write me. Write me through the website, write me through my email on the website, and ask me writing questions, and I'll direct you and support you as much as I can, as much time allows.
That's amazing. And what reading have you chosen to play us out to?
It's one of my favorite, and it's how I think it says the most of how I love my city and how grateful I am for my city loving my mother. It's called Blessed Journey, Safe Travels, and it gets me every time. Even though she had just pulled away from the curb, the bus driver opened the door for the once young, running fast as he could gentleman. The entire way uptown, she said hello to passengers, telling the woman with the cane to, take your time, patiently answering the girl who was carrying on a simultaneous conversation on her cell phone about what stop was best to get to the hospital. And when the elderly man got caught smack in the middle of the crosswalk at 3rd Street, just as the light changed, she called out to the crossing guard, no, let him cross, let him cross. And then she waited. Because a light turning green or red was not as important as an elderly man who clearly couldn't walk faster than really slow, but needed to get to the other side of the street. And because the bus driver told the crossing guard to let him cross, the crossing guard went out into the middle of the street, held up 5 lanes of traffic, and guided that old man safely to the corner. Watching her, I remembered all the people who helped Florence as she stumbled through a city she once ruled, one that was suddenly beyond her disappearing capabilities. All the bus drivers, train conductors, fellow passengers, passerbyers, deli guy, coffee shop owners, the night in the hospital when little Maria fed her, all our fellow New Yorkers, all our city's heart and soul, all our love, all our New York. God is good, the bus driver told me as I got off the bus. So are you, I answered.